we need to rethink what we see as problematic media. Now, when I say problematic, as in the title and thumbnail, in my eyes, problematic is when it's actively causing harm to people. So yes, that's when the authors are spreading hate. What I don't think it qualifies as, what I don't think it can be seen as problematic in the same way at least, is when a piece of media from an earlier time period is canceled because of the worldviews that it puts forward when those were the standards of the time. And that's what I want to talk about today. I feel like this isn't something that's talked about a lot, and it came into mind for me when I was on Fable. If you want to follow me over on Fable, I'm reading a ton of fantasy right now, and this came up when I was chatting with someone on Fable about the Mistborn trilogy, which, by the way, came out in like 2005, and obviously was written earlier. And this got me thinking, 2005 now is like 20 damn years ago, which is crazy. It made me think of the media that came out around that time. And for me, that was media that was very influential to my writing style, how I see media and the standards that I have. And I think that the more that we have like new standards, the less we really understand the standing that the people writing these stories in the era of like 2005 to 2010 had. Talking with this person on Fable, I really realized that the second book of the Mistborn trilogy really sidelined one of the female characters, and I just totally, it did not register for me. And I'd be curious to know if you guys, like, what you think of this particular character storyline. I am talking about Tindwyl, which I gather a lot of people are kind of like on the fence about her character, and I'd be curious to know why. Is it like her character in itself? Is it how she's treated in the narrative? I feel like the way she is treated in the narrative is very 2005 style writing female character. Like, she comes in, helps like two of the male characters, and then exits the narrative. Trying not to give spoilers. In case you're new here, hi, my name is Bridget. I am an aspiring fantasy novelist, and I'm currently working on my second novel. You can check out my vlogs for info on that. And I'm also queer and Canadian. The Canadian part's not really important to this video, but the queer side kind of important to this video because queer representation is a big thing that I'm going to touch on in this video. And so let's move into part 2, where I want to dive into the specific things that I've noticed, like around the media that I take inspiration from. And looking at like the 2005 to 2010 era, there are a few shows that really took off during this time, and I'm going to touch on Mistborn as well. I feel like that influenced a lot of writers, a lot of people in the creative space right now. And then I do want to move into the mindset that I personally find useful when diving into this kind of media. I don't feel like we need to abandon it completely because I don't think that that will actually help us creatively. For a little backstory, I was in one hardcore fandom of like really intensely watching a few other big shows. The one that I was hardcore into was Supernatural. And if you've been here for a while, that is no surprise. I used to do reaction videos for Supernatural. I would go to conventions, and it became a big part of my life. And if you have ever watched any of Supernatural, let alone if you've watched the whole show, you know that this show was quite problematic in the way that they treated the female characters and in the way that they queer baited their audience to oblivion. It was crazy. And yet, the show had some of the best writing at its peak. It had amazing storylines, like season 5, elite. And it's just, there's something about that story that captured so many people, and I think that it's so important to learn from those kind of experiences, and as creatives, like, analyze that. Like, what was the big thing about these fandom shows that helped them take off to such a degree? What kept Supernatural on air for 15 years and has people still going to conventions like years after it ended? Now, the other ones that I was watching at the time were Merlin and Sherlock. I think you might notice a pattern. Like, there was so much queerbaiting in the 2005 to 2010 era of like BBC/CW shows. It was crazy. There just is an energy of these shows. I don't know why they attracted queer audiences, queer female audiences. Venn diagram, how much crossover, I don't know. But they decided to queerbait so hard. I think all of these shows literally had like 2 men at the center, which is kind of funny that it attracted so many queer women to it. I think it is a lot of like seeing men express their emotions. Whoa, crazy. And yeah, around the same time we had the Mistborn trilogy era, like Mistborn Era 1 trilogy come out, and The Way of Kings I think came out in like 2011. So this is all around the same time. And so let's move into part 3. This is like a very rambly video. So let's move into the mindset that I would kind of suggest it's kind of like if you're feeling bad about watching shows or reading books that have this kind of language. It's totally valid if you want to like avoid this kind of media. I'm just saying, if you still want to watch things like Supernatural, Merlin, Sherlock, if you really enjoy like Mistborn and The Way of Kings and all these things. Side note, I just finished Way of Kings. I don't know if he gets better like moving forward. I'm still gonna continue reading Stormlight Archive because I'm very curious. And this is not, I do enjoy Brandon Sanderson's writing. I am not coming for him. I am not saying I don't like his writing. I'm literally saying it's of the time. It's language of the time. I do feel like this is something that as writers we need to pay attention to, and it's an interesting exercise that we're going to dive into right now in part 3. So let's get into mindset. I think that one of the main things that we need to consider as creative people, as writers, when we are consuming media, books, movies, TV shows, that we can look at things with a writer's perspective. And this means that we are taking inspiration from things, and we can choose what we are taking inspiration from. We don't have to like every part of a piece of media in order to keep consuming it. I feel like this came up for me a lot of times when I was in the Supernatural fandom, because people would say like, oh, I didn't finish it because I didn't like this part. And a lot of people in the Supernatural fandom, I found, would get quite defensive about the show. And even when people would like say these things to me, I feel like they would be scared to criticize the show because they thought I was gonna like go off on them and be like, no, you're wrong. You just don't understand the show. And sure, some people might have that response, but personally, I'm like, yes, I acknowledge that there are these issues with the show, and it's totally valid that people couldn't make it through. I totally understand that some things are not for certain people. When we are consuming media, it's important to know where to draw the line. Everyone has their own line, and different people obviously have different triggers. I think that if you really don't enjoy when female characters are brushed aside and there's like no mention of female characters, it might be quite hard to watch shows like Supernatural. But personally, I didn't have that issue. Did I enjoy when female characters were on screen? Hell yeah, it was amazing. And yet I'm like, okay, I have my other favorite male character. I got Castiel over there. I'm happy. So there are, like, I think it's important to know what your limits are, and then look at the media you're consuming, analyze what is kind of pissing you off about it, and use that later. Like, if something is pissing you off, like if something's missing from this narrative and it really like grinds your gears and you really just wish they would do that, you wish the writers would put that in your own work. That is like, your writing is the opportunity to bring that kind of story into the world. The next tip I want to talk about is watching things like a historian / scholar instead of an audience member. This is really fun. I think that especially as creatives, as writers, we have this unique lens of dissecting things. And I know there's like so many memes about people like getting annoyed with watching movies with filmmakers because they'll be like, oh, did you see how they did that shot? I'm guilty. I've done that. And it's like I have to ask for approval. Like, are you guys okay with me like nerding out about shots? Like, okay. It is really cool to like watch a movie and try and figure out why a certain character arc made you cry. It's great to look at a story that made you angry. Look at why it did that. And when it comes to shows that are problematic, it is important to look at the context of that media. It's important to look at why this happened, why it made you feel this way, and how you can take that feeling and use it as fuel for your own work. This is so important. Honestly, this is one of the reasons that I even, like, first of all, went to film school. I literally went to, like, I did my first short film because of the cancellation. If you look up there, there's a Wayward Sisters fan art that I did. Because of the cancellation of the Wayward Sisters spinoff by the CW, I was so frustrated that I was like, I need to make something. I need to put something out into the world that fills a void in my soul. And I did that. And that was really empowering. The fact that I could go and make something that just used that energy felt incredible. And I highly encourage you as a writer / creative of any kind to harness the frustration at any kind of media that is lacking something that you want and turn it into something that will make other people feel seen, feel heard, and bring something new into the world. I don't know. It's really fun. It's really, as I said, it's really empowering when you create something that you're just like, you were the like kernel of rage at the state of the media, and now you exist, and it's glorious. This leads into the final thing that I want to talk about. I know this video is probably like very rambly, and I'm not sure how long it's gonna be because it's like, am I just gonna cut out a ton because I'm just rambling about the same thing? Now, I want you to think a little bit about the things that actually impact you in this way. This is the final thing I want to talk about. And it's kind of self-development-y because it's all about knowing what really impacts you as a person. There are things that trigger us, and I'm not saying that in the like really intense way. Sorry, I got a hair. It's more so in the way of creative passion. It's creative enragement in a way. It's like I am so frustrated with the state of the media that I have to make something that fills this gap that my soul is crying out for. And knowing what areas of your soul are crying out to be heard will change the way that you create media. And this is something that you can notice from the media you watch. This is kind of random, but I was literally watching the show Victoria, like the show about Queen Victoria. And a part of me is just like, I've never seen a sapphic pairing like Victoria and Albert, because there's not really there's not like a sapphic royal equivalent. And I'm like, why isn't there? Like, if you put it in a fantasy world, it's totally possible. It is completely doable. Anything is possible in fantasy. And yet we're still stuck in this very patriarchal mindset where it's like, whose fantasy are we living in, guys? I don't understand. Why can't we break through this patriarchal system? We can do literally anything, which I was literally listening to the audiobook of Priory of the Orange Tree. Don't cancel me. I haven't read it yet. And I was like, the queendom? I'm living for this? And that the heirs are their daughters? Yes. But anywho, I digress. Yes, I feel like it is such an important thing to discover about ourselves as creatives. The things that really make us want to create in this way of bringing representation and bringing the things that we really want to see into the media. I think that's all I've got. I really wanted to share this. I was not planning to make this video, to be honest. I did not know that I was going to make a video about like staying consistent with writing, which I'm still gonna make, by the way. It's gonna be coming out in like 2 weeks. But I really wanted to talk about this. I haven't seen people talk about this. If people are talking about this, I haven't found them. So I just wanted to have a little chatty time, and I'm probably gonna get back to writing. I hope you are doing well. This does kind of feel like we were just on like a video call and I've just been rambling at you for like half an hour probably. So I hope you're doing well. I hope the writing is flying out of your fingertips and out of your soul. And I will catch you next week with a vlog. Hit all the buttons and hang out. And I'll catch you next week. Bye. Yeah, I've got like hair up my nose. Yeah.